We are just 1 week away from finding out the new homes for the top 3 wide receiver prospects, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, and Odunze. We discuss their fantasy expectations and rankings in their rookie season on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Magdziuk. When I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst for NFL Network.
And I'm your other host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I am covering everything NFL, fantasy, and betting for sportingnews.com, including a lot with the draft. So another mock draft up, looking at all the prospects, and excited to get into it. We did look a little bit at these dynasty values of these wide receivers. Now we're going to take a deep dive into what they're worth here in fantasy in depth with all their scouting and all that good stuff today.
Yes, absolutely. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. As you brought up, so the next 3 episodes, we're going to be focusing on these wide receivers that are going to be drafted in the upcoming draft. And there's a good 15 of them that could go in the first 3 rounds. This draft class is absolutely stacked. Now, today we're going to start with the big 3, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, and Odunze, because we know for sure those 3 are going day 1, probably first 10 picks overall. And then we'll get into the other guys on Friday's show and Monday's show. We'll hit on 15 total wide receivers throughout that time. So right off the bat here, Marvin Harrison Jr., we expect him to be the first wide receiver drafted come next Thursday. Talk me through Marvin Harrison Jr. Does he have any weaknesses? Because watching him, it's just a beautiful, beautiful sight to see.
Yeah, when you were out on yesterday's show, I was looking at his dynasty value, and it's all the way up at wide receiver 7. This is everywhere, not among the rookies. He would obviously be at wide receiver 1 among the rookies for dynasty, but this is his value overall. So he's already been considered in the top 12 before we even know what team for sure he's with. Now, we're speculating that he's going to go number 4 to the Cardinals. Now, what I've heard recently, it's getting ridiculous because Marvin Harrison didn't work out. He didn't do anything at the combine. He didn't do anything in his pro day. You're starting to hear, would a team take Malik Nabers or Odunze ahead of Marvin Harrison? I would not. I mean, this guy, I've seen him for multiple seasons now, and this is how good he is. At C.J. Stroud's pro day, and we know what Stroud did as a rookie for the Texans, he was the best Ohio State draft prospect on the field, and he was just catching passes. He was just there. He wasn't preparing for the draft. So we've actually seen him perform at a pro day, and if you watched any kind of major college football, this guy is just dominating game after game. He's got better size than his father ever had, so he's going to be a bigger threat, I think, all over the field. His father was a very good touchdown scorer, but I look at the body type here just reminds you of the better alphas in this league that we've seen go high. Julio Jones, AJ Green, and those guys were can't miss when they came out, and they both had Hall of Fame careers. And more important for our purposes here, they were awesome fantasy players for a long time. So I don't see anything that I would want to knock Marvin Harrison. I think the only thing that people are looking at is like, okay, Malik Nabers is pretty good. What's the gap between Harrison and Nabers, and then Odunze and going there? But he's big. He can catch everything. He can stretch the field. He can finish the red zone. I really don't see anything there. And I think when you look at that wide receiver 7 for Dynasty, that also could be a ranking for immediacy in redraft in 2024. That's how special he could be. Now, we talked about his landing spots. I'm not sure. I think the Cardinals are pretty darn good, but I will say there's one more. I don't think it's going to happen, is the Bills. If he ended up with Josh Allen as the number 1 receiver, that would be something awesome. So right now I'm still predicting number 4 to the Cardinals. If they trade out, I think he's going 5 to the Chargers.
I really hope that the Cardinals just stay there and they pick him and they don't trade back. We're hearing a lot of that. Maybe teams want to trade up for a quarterback. And I get the Cardinals. They have a lot of holes trading back. They could get more starters, blah, blah, blah. But I really love this landing spot for him there. We've seen 2 straight years now of dominant production out of Marvin Harrison Jr. and everything he does looks like with ease, right? So I have no worries that he's going to come into the NFL and struggle at all. My biggest worry is landing spot. He needs to land in a spot where he could be a true wide receiver one, get those targets that he deserves. He came through in the biggest moments last year. He scored the most touchdowns among anyone in the FBS on third down. He had 7 receiving touchdowns on third down pass attempts last year. So he comes through in the big moments. And I think it's fair to say when we're looking to see what his ceiling could be this year as a rookie, I know we have it in our mind like, oh, scared to take rookies. I might take them a second or like, don't overthink it. Take the veteran that's already good. But we have now seen in 3 of the last 4 seasons, a rookie wide receiver put up 1,400 plus receiving yards. That happened one singular time in NFL history prior to 4 seasons ago. So it's just, we're starting to see this production. And yeah, the 17 games helped get them to this 1,400 mark, but they're dominating. It's not just because of the number of games. So the last 4 years, we had Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. I do think I'm not going to be shocked at all if Marvin Harrison Jr. puts up a year like those guys did. And I have no issues with him being ranked as a top 10 wide receiver. I'll say right now for redraft, he's at wide receiver 18 in ADP, but I do expect that to shoot up by the time, if he does go to the Cardinals or the Chargers, it's going to immediately shoot up.
Yeah, everything lines up here pretty well with the talent and the skill set and the landing spots, and there's a lot of needy wide receiver teams. So everything is perfect, what we're looking for in fantasy, the environment to produce right away in a big level. And with all due respect to Chase and Jefferson and Nacua, this could be the best yet because he's that good. And we're going to have a lot of fun with where we want to draft him once he's on the team officially, and whether it's the Cardinals or Chargers or somewhere else. But yeah, it's going to be fun. And the one place I don't think I want to see him is the Patriots. I don't think I want to see any wide receiver on the Patriots at this point. But I don't think, luckily for us, they're not going to take him at number 3. So I think that's okay. I wouldn't be thrilled either if he was on the Giants. Yeah. I don't want to see him with Daniel Jones. I want to see him with Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, or Justin Herbert. That's it. I don't want to see any other quarterback playing with this guy. That could be the only thing that relays him. But we also brought up a few toss-ups here. And I'll start, Michelle, and you can come back at me with these. Are you going Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jalen Waddle, who just was kind of extended by the Dolphins?
This is an easy one for me. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. by a good shot. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm going Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't want a number 2. I've got a number 1 in Harrison, so I'm going there. Now, this is an interesting one. 2 Ohio State guys. Well, actually, we're going to do this twice with Ohio State guys. Marvin Harrison Jr. or Chris Olave? Where are you going?
Yeah, this gets a little bit harder now because they're both expected to be 1s. We still have to see where Marvin Harrison lands, but Chris Olave should be a 1. Now, Chris Olave is with Derek Carr. Now, if you tell me Marvin Harrison Jr. lands with Justin Herbert or Kyler Murray, I'm going to want Marvin Harrison Jr. over Chris Olave. If he lands with the Patriots or the Giants, that's going to be really, really tough there. With the Giants especially, it would be pretty even. I probably would lean Chris Olave in that situation, but if he lands with the Cardinals, Falcons is also another landing spot. Maybe they move up, or the Chargers. I would be all in on Harrison over Olave.
Yeah, I'm still thinking I'm on Harrison because Derek Carr is annoying sometimes, and he got Rashid Shaheed involved in some games, and sometimes you forget about Chris Olave. He was pretty steady, but I think you get a pretty high floor with Olave, but I think you have an incredible ceiling here with Harrison. No, I think the last one is the most interesting and might force me in a different direction. Marvin Harrison Jr., another Ohio State guy, Garrett Wilson.
So I think both have extremely high ceiling, right? Garrett Wilson could put up a huge year. We haven't seen it from him yet, but he also hasn't had a quarterback. The touchdowns haven't been there. They should be there with Aaron Rodgers. I will say if Harrison Jr. ends with the Cardinals, I'm going to still want Harrison Jr. over Garrett Wilson. Any other team, I might go with Garrett Wilson, unless like the Bills trade up or something, then obviously Harrison. But yeah, it's going to come down to the exact landing spot here. But at this exact moment, I kind of lean Harrison. And maybe this is just a shiny new toy object staring at me and I'm being stupid. But I think he's going to come into the league and immediately dominate.
Yeah, this one was tougher. I think I'm going to go Garrett Wilson, even though I was burned by this pick last year. Like, it was really hard to watch. I mean, I saw what he could have done in fantasy if he had a quarterback. He was still pretty good considering how bad his quarterback play was with that Aaron Rodgers. But I'm going to say, let's see what happens there in Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. It's not like they have a ton of targets either at this very moment. Mike Williams, we'll see about his health. We'll see if they add other receivers there. But yeah, I'm going with Garrett Wilson. I think the per game and per play numbers are a little bit up for Wilson. I think if you're looking at physical talents, I think they're both right up there as Ohio State prospects.
So really quickly before we end Marvin Harrison Jr. Segment here, where do you predict him to land come next Thursday? Where do you think what team do you think he's on?
I'm going to stick with the Cardinals. I don't see them moving out of 4. I think they're trying to do that, but they got to look at it. They need a number 1 wide receiver for Kyler Murray. You've just brought him back and kept him in your mix for a while. So you're not moving on a quarterback. You got to go get your rookie wide receiver.
I think the Cardinals are going to move back with one of these teams that wants a quarterback, and the Chargers. He'll end with the Chargers, and I'll be fine with that. I'll be happy with the Chargers. Just don't go to the Giants, please. That would be great. All right, we're going to get into Malik Nabers next out of LSU right after we hear from one of our awesome sponsors. Guys, I need you all to listen up for this huge announcement. I have been tracking the leaderboards every day, keeping my eye on the scores, putting all of my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce I'm finally on top. That's right. Obviously, I'm talking about the hit mobile game Monopoly Go. You probably heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on classic Monopoly. You can play anywhere, anytime. You explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon, all while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly. You can charge your friends rent on your iconic properties or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. But my favorite part is the leaderboards where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So go get yourself on the charts. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. And then before we hop into Malik Nabers here, just a programming announcement. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle from Vinnie. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So many people have Malik Nabers as their wide receiver 2 in this draft class. I'll say he's my wide receiver 3. The guy we're talking about next, Rome Odunze, is my wide receiver 2, but they're close, right? So let's talk about Nabers. He's extremely, extremely young. Won't turn 21 years old until the end of July. So lots to work with here. Extremely talented. Led the FBS in receiving yards per game last year. Ranked receiving yards per game, and just ranked second behind only Odunze in receiving yards, tied for third with receiving touchdowns with 14 touchdowns. He's extremely explosive before and after the catch. He had 34 catches of 20 plus yards last year that led the FBS, and he had at least one catch of 20 yards in every single regular season game for LSU last year. Like, he's just a playmaker. That's what he is. He's great after the catch. He could play in the slot or on the outside. He is really, really interesting. He is the smaller one of this group, but still plenty of good size, 6 foot, pretty much on the dot, 199 pounds. How do you feel about Nabers? Do you have him ranked number 2 or 3?
I am at number 2. He's a pretty solid number 2. I would say the gap is narrowing, but I still have Marvin Harrison well ahead of him, and you have to go in that direction. But I think you look at Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I know this offense from LSU has changed quite a bit. There's been some turnover. You didn't have, of course, Joe Burrow delivering the ball, but you had a pretty good quarterback that's going to go in the top 3. Jaden Daniels as the quarterback, Heisman campaign. Nabers was a big part of that, and the big arm downfield making it look easy. Well, Nabers, you're right. He just flat out makes plays. That's all you can say. And I like the versatility. They can line up inside or outside. Remember, we all thought Jefferson couldn't maybe play on the outside, but he transitioned well from the slot to the outside. We've seen Chase go outside inside when the Bengals need him and can scheme him open there. So I think that's the same thing with Nabers. I like the fact that he's not going to just get locked down by a shutdown corner on the outside. They'll move around. get him open short if they need to. And if they can't stretch the field, I think you'll see him used a lot like the Bengals use Chase. And we know that adds up to some beautiful fantasy production in Cincinnati. So I think he has a pretty high ceiling as well. And I think he'll be involved quite a bit. And there's just so many teams. So we may not be as hot on the Giants and Patriots, but there's just so many teams. And we're hoping this is the ideal scenario. You have Cardinals, Chargers back to back with both of these guys, because I think Nabers has been on the Chargers' radar for quite some time. They're looking for all kinds of receivers. They need to replace some of Keenan Allen in the slot, what he can do. They're looking for the big play ability of Mike Williams that was there. This guy can do it all, so why wouldn't you go after him? So I'm really excited about what Malik Nabers can do. Again, I'd like to see him with the Chargers. I think he's a good fit there. I think that is likely right now. I think if you look bad, I'm not sure if I want him on the Jets, because then if he somehow lasts that pick to the 10, I don't see it. But if they move up to go get him, I don't want to see that, because then he's going to have to share with Garrett Wilson. So that's how I kind of look at where Malik Nabers can land.
I'm with you as well. I think the Chargers are a great fit for him. And when it comes to Nabers, this is my thing with him. I want him with a big arm quarterback that's super accurate as well. So when you're like watching all of Nabers' big plays, right? Like, of course, every wide receiver has to make hard plays here and there, but his biggest plays of his career have come with Jaden Daniels just putting the ball right on the money, right? Like Nabers didn't have to do really anything, but he did all the work getting open and before the catch and then after the catch, sure. But like the actual ball placement was just always into Malik Nabers' hands. It's not to say he can't make crazy catches if he needs to, but he did have some drop issues. He uses his body sometimes. So like I really, really don't want him to land with Daniel Jones, right? Or like a guy like that where the accuracy is not going to be close to what he saw in college. But if you give him a Justin Herbert's going to put it right in the bucket, what he's used to. And we know what he's capable of doing before and after the catch. It's just about the quarterback being able to hit him in stride like he's used to. That's where he's got his production from. That's why Joe Burrow was so good early on in his career too, going deep. Right now, they kind of use him all over the field a bit more. But Nabers could be special immediately as long as he lands with a quarterback that has a strong arm and is going to be accurate. Like Daniel Jones has a strong arm, sure, but it's not going to be on point most of the time. So I think the Giants is the worst landing spot for him, while the Chargers would be the best.
Yeah, and Daniel Jones is kind of a weaker version of Jaden Daniels. He can't run as fast. He's an athlete, and he can't throw as deep as well as Jaden Daniels. He makes it look easy with that big live arm. So, yeah, he can't have a downgrade. You need to have somebody who can really fling it. And again, we have no issues. Again, Murray, Herbert, Allen, any of those guys, you'll be like, okay, I can deal with this. A guy that can move around and then fling it deep to me and buy some time, extend plays, and get the ball to me. So I do like that. I mean, Daniel Jones can't do that, but he's not a guy that necessarily will extend plays to make big plays with his arm. He'll run and take off. We don't want that as much either with Nabers. So let's just hope it's not Giants. I guess we're anti-Giants with either of these wide receivers.
Well, it's hard to watch because when you watch Malik Nabers, it's hard not to see like a DJ Moore type, right? Yeah. And we've seen DJ Moore not be utilized to the best of his abilities throughout his career with the Panthers, right? He always had to play with terrible quarterbacks. Then he just gets a slight upgrade to Justin Fields, someone that defenses have to be scared of. It's not like he's the most accurate, but like all of a sudden, DJ Moore puts up a career year by far in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. It's like, I just don't want Nabers to be stuck in that situation, because I do feel like his skill set is very close to a DJ Moore.
All right, now we'll play some either or. I won't include Nabers versus DJ Moore. I won't make that hard call for you in the draft. But I'll start with this one, a second-year player, Jaden Reed or Malik Nabers. Where are you going in the draft in fantasy?
So are we thinking he goes to the Chargers or Giants? I will say my prediction, I'm going to just give it away, is the Chargers. So if that's my prediction, Nabers ends the Chargers, I'm easily taking Nabers over Jaden Reed.
Yeah, one team we didn't talk about that could somehow end up with Nabers, I don't see it necessarily. They got other needs, is the Titans. They've been attached to Nabers quite a bit as a potential guy. But again, I don't know if I want him with Will Levis, but I actually might prefer Will Levis over Daniel Jones.
I would prefer Will Levis over Daniel Jones for Nabers.
So I think I have to go with Nabers over Jaden Reed, because there's a little bit of a crowd there. Reed is also a slot receiver. There's some competition for key targets. So I would say Nabers over Jaden Reed. Now, this is a little bit more interesting. and we don't know the quarterback for this other receiver at this moment. Malik Nabers or a top pick from last year, Jordan Addison of the Vikings.
I think no matter where Nabers goes, I'm going to choose him over Addison. Wherever he goes, he should be a wide receiver 1. Unless he ends up with the Bears or something like that. Like if one of these guys ends up with the Bears, it's a good situation for him in his career probably, but for a rookie season, that's going to be really hard to earn a lot of targets there. So, but anywhere else that he's going to be the wide receiver 1, I'm taking him over Jordan Addison.
The only way I take Addison ahead of Nabers is if Justin Jefferson somehow gets traded, and Addison has to become the default number 1. And then, yeah, I might be talking a little bit more about Jordan Addison coming up in this draft or in this offseason. Now let's look at the last one, a little bit of a veteran curveball here. Malik Nabers, or in the new offense of the Commanders, also not knowing who the quarterback is, Terry McLaurin.
So it would be interesting because he could be playing with Jaden Daniels now, right? And I just talked about this. Jaden Daniels was putting it right where the ball needed to be for Nabers to make all these plays. He could be playing with Nabers' old quarterback. I do think if they were to get Jaden Daniels, probably the best quarterback that McLaurin will ever have played with. He is. I mean, as soon as we saw Jacoby Brissett come in last year, it was like he was dominant, and that it was like 3 quarters worth, but. I mean, if someone's willing to just throw him up the ball, he's going to come down with it. So I do think McLaurin has a much better year. Again, it's probably just the shiny toy syndrome, and I'm excited for Nabers. So I'd probably still go with Nabers because you're like, well, Nabers could be anything. And McLaurin is like 1,100 receiving yard guy. So I would probably go with him. It would probably be the wrong decision, though, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I'm going McLaurin. I was high on him. I think he's a little bit undervalued right now. He was down there at the wide receiver 3s. I like the offense with Kingsbury. I like the potential of the quarterback. They're going to focus on him and Jahan Dotson a lot more in this offense. So I really like that aspect on this team. So, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit with McLaurin, but it's close. And I like both of them potentially as wide receiver 2s. And finally, the landing spots, I think you've made it clear you like the Chargers. I think I like the Chargers as well. And the worst landing spot, I think we made it pretty clear on this one as well. It's the Giants.
Is your prediction that he'll land with the Chargers? Because that was mine.
Yeah, I think so right now. I mean, these are 2 teams, because of the Vikings, that can throw everything off, trade up for that quarterback. I think either one could be out of that mix. Chargers also have a lot of needs, right? They could think about moving down for Brock Bowers or get some offensive line help, that kind of thing, and stockpile a little bit. But again, I'd like to see Nabers there because I think he solves both of their problems without Allen and Williams a lot here for Justin Herbert.
I love it. And now I can't wait to talk about my wide receiver 2, Rome Odunze.
Yeah, no slouch. I mean, he's not a very far third from these 2 guys. So we'll break him down in our final segment. And we do have to tell you about an exciting new sponsor on the show. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising costs of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom, right? With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. When it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested all that you can. Now you need to take those investments to the next level by using every financial greatest tool, Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for the extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage account for an unified look at your wealth, including the 401k and other investments. Comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors. How Yahoo Finance ensures that you'll have the insight to look at your wealth and fit it there in its entirety. Check it out for comprehensive financial news analysis. Visit the brand behind every great investor. That's Yahoo Finance, yahoofinance.com. That's right. And the #1 financial destination for you is yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Get started with better investing today. All right, Michelle, we will get to your guy that you have number 2 on the board. It's Rome Odunze out of Washington. So another great career in college and great offseason as well, getting ready for the draft. So let's talk about what makes you love Rome Odunze.
Well, let's just talk about his size and athleticism real quick. So 6'2", almost 6'3", 212 pounds. And I realize everyone now sees like 4'3", and they're like, "Ooh, you're so fast at 4'3", but he ran a 4'45", and everyone's like, it's fine. At 212 pounds, so 6'3", like a 4'45" is still extremely athletic. He had a 39 vertical inch jump. That's great for his size. 10-foot 4-inch broad jump. Like, he is plenty athletic to dominate in the NFL. He's actually the guy, not Marvin Harrison Jr., not Malik Nabers. He leads the FBS in receiving yards and receiving yards per game over the last 2 seasons. He led the FBS in receiving yards this past year with 1,640. He averaged 2.93 yards per route run last year, according to PFF. That's the most in a season by any college player since Jamar Chase in 2019. Minimum 500 routes run. Dominated on first downs, led the FBS by far over the last 2 seasons in first down catches. And then also he led the FBS in contested catches last year. So I feel like he can do it all. He's this great body size. He has the athleticism. He's that vertical threat. He has good hands. He's also a huge red zone weapon. The only thing he has to really work on is kind of like expanding his route tree, but that can get done in the NFL rather quickly. And like, I just think he has the capabilities to be used immediately as a deep threat for any team, but he also has a skill set to be a true wide receiver 1 in this league as he continues to grow. I I I absolutely love everything about Odunze.
Yeah, and he was on a show recently. I think it was the Kevin Clark show on the ESPN Manning stuff that they have, and he was talking about his 2 influences here quite a bit. Devontae Adams, he's drawn some comparisons to him because of that
Yeah.
size and ability in the red zone to make plays, but also Keenan Allen. So that tells you something, right? That he can be willing with his size to line up in the slot and do the dirty work as a big slot if needed to make a team. So that's good. But we also look at his ceiling and floor. I think he has a pretty high floor. I think ceiling might be limited at first because his landing spot may not be as a clear number 1 target the way we will see with Harrison and Nabers. And that's my one concern with him in fantasy. Is he going to go to a place that's crowded? You say, where is a place that's kind of crowded here? I would say the Bears right now, right? If you have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, he compared himself to Keenan Allen. It's going to be hard to get meaningful snaps and targets behind those 2 guys for sure, right? With Caleb Williams, he's going to look at the veterans there. You also have to worry about Cole Kmet and the former Charger Gerald Everett at tight end. There's some mouths to feed in that Bears offense. So I don't necessarily want to see him there. Even though the Bears want to consider him at number 9 and like that pairing, right? Get Williams, Odunze right off the bat, get your rookie combination, long-term guys that are going to go at it. But I don't want to see him there necessarily. I want to see him where he has a chance to be at least a number 2. And I think that's what we're looking at. The Jets have been rumored to take him as well at number 10. So that's a landing spot. The Titans might be in on him there at 8. So there are a lot of different potential landing spots. I actually wouldn't mind, Michelle. We've been ripping on Daniel Jones and the Giants. I think this would be the best receiver for him because, again, he's a short area guy that could do some damage. It's not always requiring the deep ball accuracy of Daniel Jones, and they have nobody else. They don't have this type of player. They're clearing house of all these guys, the Sterling Shepard types and all these guys that they've tried to trot out there. They don't have Isaiah Hodgins anymore. Stop it with these guys. We just need somebody that's a go-to guy, reliable all over the field, and I do like the coaching staff there. Brian Dable, I think there's a little bit of stuff on Diggs in Odunze too, that you can line him up in different spots. So I'm going to say quickly, the best landing spot for him is that with the Giants. And then the Bears, no, I don't want to see him there at all because we're going to have to wait for his fantasy value until Keenan Allen breaks down.
I know, that's the thing. Like, if Keenan Allen wasn't there, it would be a great spot.
Okay.
And maybe it's the best spot for his career, but it would really stink for it. Would be like Jackson Smith to Jigba last year, where he was my wide receiver 1 in last year's class, but he had to play with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Like, it's hard to beat out veterans that way for those targets. So yeah, I unfortunately that is where I see Odunze going, because unless the Cardinals, Chargers, and Giants all take wide receivers, I think he then falls to the Bears. So it comes down to, do they want a wide receiver or not, right? Because I think the Titans take the top tackle on the board. I think the Falcons take the top defender. And then it's just the Bears left. I would love the Bills so much to move up for him. That would be absolutely amazing. Or a team like the Jaguars, or a team like the Colts. There's definitely teams that could move up. It's just, do teams want to use that capital on moving up for a wide receiver in such a heavy wide receiver class as well? So he might be stuck with the Bears. Let's say he goes to the Bears, the worst case scenario. So right now he's wide receiver 40 in redraft. And if he goes to the Bears, I don't know how much more he moves up. Would you rather Odunze or Jackson Smith-Njigba, like I brought up? He's still with DK and Lockett.
Yeah, I just looked at the Bears situation, but I also know Keenan Allen could break down again. If that's the case, then he's in business as a potential number 2 target on that team. Well, we know it's Smith-Njigba. I'm sorry, until Drew Lock is now with the Giants, so it's probably in my head. But the combination of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, there we go, they're still ahead of him until I see one of those guys really fall off, preferably Lockett, right, in that role. Then we can't really go all in on JSN.
Yeah, I'm going Odunze as well. Odunze or George Pickens. This is actually rather easy for me. I would go Pickens. If Odunze goes to the Chargers, I'm going Odunze. But if Odunze goes to the Giants or the Bears, I'm going with Pickens.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Pickens. He's going to dominate targets at this very moment. Now, I would see the Steelers also being in the mix to add a receiver. We know probably in the second round in this draft at the earliest. But
or Brandon
right now,
Ayuk
Pickens is going to dominate.
Round.
Yeah.
They're trading for Brandon.
I know. Then it would be great. If it was Odunze and Pickens together, imagine that. That offense is going to be a lot of fun with Russell Wilson, that big arm. So we'll see. We can't rule them out. I mean, they've been attached to so many players in this draft in the first round, your Steelers. So I'm really excited what they do. But Pickens right now, I'm going with him because I think he's going to be untapped as a bit of an alpha in this offense without Deontay Johnson.
Now, let's say the Chargers surprise us and they take Odunze and Nabers ends up going to the Giants. Which one would you rather have for fantasy next year?
Oh boy. Yeah, this is tough. So I guess it's a matter of, I want the right person on the right team. So if Odunze goes to your Chargers and Nabers goes to your Giants, I think you go Odunze. If you look at Odunze to the Giants and Nabers to the Chargers, it's Nabers. So maybe it's, again, an indictment, not on Drew Lockett and Daniel Jones, but Drew Lock and Daniel Jones, that I don't want either of these guys throwing to really Malik Nabers in this one. But Odunze, again, a little bit more technical with his size and a route runner. I would be okay with that because then I could get away with some volume and touchdowns. But I think it's going to be tough. I mean, this is very close in talent, so the landing spot location is going to be pretty critical. And on top of the style of offense and all that, the quarterback is going to be huge.
Yeah. And we do have to remember, I think sometimes maybe we take landing spots a little too harshly, right? Like when AJ Brown went to the Titans, we were like, ooh, gross. And then he dominated right away. And then when he goes to the Eagles, we're like, ooh, gross. Jalen Hurts, even though I loved him, so I didn't say that. But he dominated then with Jalen Hurts. And then when Stephon Diggs got traded to Josh Allen, it was like, oh no, like his production, he was amazing. Sometimes these wide receivers can help out these quarterbacks and overcome the situation. So we don't want to take it too far, but it might just make the tiebreaker, right, between the two players. We're going to get into many, many more wide receivers over the next couple of episodes. So don't quit on us now. We got lots to go before the draft next week. That's it for today's show, though. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers will be back tomorrow talking about 6 more rookie wide receivers. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.